Welcome to this Betting Clever podcast featuring myself and Josh here from SBC. Now, in this episode, rather than interview a guest, instead, Josh and I are going to use these occasional pods to converse about some key topics, share insight, resources, information, etc. for those of you interested in the great game. So let me bring in my co-conspirator for today's episode, Josh Holloway. How's it going, Josh? You're fresh off a big win on the golf on Sunday that you described to me as pants off. I trust you have clothes on.
I do. It's not like our interview when I first got the job here, Pete. You made me do horrific things.
Right, that's getting edited. What a start.
I thought I'd try and kibosh the podcast right from the get-go. So there we go.
There we go. All right. Well, Josh, you and I are both full-on punters. We take our betting very seriously, and then we blend our work here at SBC with that betting, and one feeds the other and vice versa. There's a nice synergy to it. So I know we're not full-time punters, Josh, because I would put that as someone who lives off their betting, but how many hours a week do you think you bet, mate?
Oh, gosh, it takes up a lot of my time. So I have a relatively stable, like daily kind of routine. So I get up and place my bets. I'll have done the work for that the night before. We obviously have a look at some Tipster services and stuff. We've got a new automated system that we've got going. So been doing quite a lot of work on that. And then I watch the racing and more watch the markets and the build up to the racing as well. Just learning about those all the time. And then, when I get to the evening time, that's the preparation for the next day. So that's when I do my 3 or 4 hours work, depending on how many cards there are or what kind of action's going on. And we're coming into Tuesday, Wednesday now, so that's when I start to do all my golf. So got started on the 2 for this week, and then I'll finish them off tomorrow. How about you? How many hours a week do you reckon you spend on it?
Yeah, so mine's more during like 9 to 5 working hours. I do most of, obviously run SBC and I do a lot of bets. My bets often come in, like I do the notifications of some services and some strategies I use. So some of them is during the day and it takes me like 10 seconds. And then like you, golf on a Tuesday, Wednesday. And there's always other things that I do some NFL stuff later in the week. So, and then football every day as well. So yeah, it takes up a good chunk of time. Yeah. But the main point is we both bet on lots of different things. You know, you're more racing than I am, but we'll bet on anything if it's value, won't we, mate? And I guess that segues nicely onto the first topic. We're going to try and get into some meaty topics, and we're trying to avoid regurgitating what you've already heard from other people, whether it be other podcasts or other articles, because there's a white paper in the UK, and I know there's a good number of SBC listeners and readers and members who are based in the UK. And if you're not, then you might want to watch on with interest, because what happens in a mature market like the UK manifests itself externally in other countries. And for me, Josh, I know we talk about this, but the Gambling Commission seems to just be doubling down, blinkered, full steam ahead with affordability checks, regardless of what ever comes in. And I think the only point they might stop is if the government turns around and says, okay, you're done, this isn't going to work, and there needs to be a reset. But I can't see the Gambling Commission changing tact anytime soon.
No, I think we both listened to Andrew Rose's latest podcast. Interesting, to say the least, but just seems to be heads down. We're going to move ahead with what we've planned. There's so many contradictions that run through it all. So they keep on talking about, or people who make these arguments talk about an evidence base. There's no evidence base for affordability checks, especially at the thresholds that they've set. And any kind of anecdotal evidence or evidence from elsewhere around the world that you bring up with these people, the black market, pushing people towards operators that aren't regulated at all, they come up with some really spurious answers for me. They just don't really address the problem. I was saying to you the other day, I can go down the pub by me, I can get sleeves of cigarettes for $5 a pack, I can get a dodgy stick where I can watch Sky for 20 quid a year. I mean, that's without going into stuff that's like quite illegal, so I won't go into those. But This is what happens with the black market. If you regulate something too much, or if you increase the price too high, people will find an alternative. People won't just stop. I mean, some people just will stop, no doubt, but a lot of people won't, and they'll find an alternative. That's the main argument against it for me. There's obviously other ideas around liberty and freedom to choose, make your own decisions as an adult with your taxed money. But yeah, it doesn't feel good at the moment. It doesn't feel like they're listening either. It doesn't feel like a consultation. I don't know what you think. There have been some recent developments, haven't there, with the GCF stuff?
Yeah, the Gambling Consumers Forum, who've been great, absolutely superb, but their criticism of or calling out of the Gambling Commission. For example, the 2021 call for evidence that we kind of drove a lot to had several thousand entries, and it wasn't a short kind of entry. There was a lot of work that each individual had to put into that. They haven't published it.
No.
And there's the freedom of information requests has been denied. I don't know how often that happens, but it just shows you the lack of transparency. It's like, what are you hiding, guys? And talking of hiding, Andrew Rhodes, CEO, he can come on our podcast. He doesn't have to come on ours. He can come on another media outlet, one with big attraction, and answer some questions. He went on Nick Luck a few months ago, and it was an absolute shit show afterwards because the amount of stuff he came out with, and people are like, well, that's not true, from all walks of life. So he's just hiding away, isn't he? He will go to conferences where it's like Gamble Aware or where he's going to be welcome because he's on their side, but he's not interested in talking to the Racing Post. He's not interested in talking to anybody who might ask him a difficult question, unless it's, what's your favourite dinosaur? Because I know that was on that podcast.
Oh, gosh. I think they spent about 10 minutes talking about their favourite TV shows on Disney+. It was just like...
What's your favourite biscuit?
He had a hefty pay rise recently, didn't he? And it's like, I'd love a job like that. Sit around, sit in your boxes talking about TV all day.
Isn't what you do?
That's what I do, yeah. I don't know if you saw it. It was quite obscure. I don't think it got retweeted and that too much, but there was a Freedom of Information request made to the Gambling Commission. I believe it was about one of the fines they had put out about some regulation of a certain firm. And they responded with the strangest response I've ever seen. It was along the lines of, the public trusts the Gambling Commission at the moment, and if we release this information, the public won't trust us anymore. And it's like, that's not a grounds for not releasing information, but that seems to be how the organisations run. You
mentioned the Gambling Consumers Forum, and I think they paid for a poll run by YouGov, one of their more reputable polling companies. And 43% of those surveyed said they had an experience of betting to some degree, and they bet. 60% supported the proposed affordability checks. So that's a negative in that box. Although I would suggest that perhaps they're more complex, and just ringing someone up randomly and saying, "Do you support this?" Well, yeah, it sounds good to me. People perhaps who haven't crunched the numbers like Chris Fawcett has, the gambling reform guy. 68% supported. Gambling Consumers Forum have a proposal for an app called BetterHelp, which provides those who are needing, have a problem perhaps or gambling disorder with resources and information to seek help. 68% support that. And it's a good proposal, it's an off-ramp from those looking to get out of affordability. 3%, so more than half, said there was a risk of the black market growing if checks are applied. Now, I would say you don't need to be a scholar to realise that, to understand what prohibition means, and we talked about that.
Yeah.
And I think the Gamblers Consumers Forum are doing great work. I heard Nevin Truesdale on TalkSport. He was putting up his petition. He actually name-checked the Gambling Consumers Forum and their app as a solution, as an alternative to affordability. So I think there's some momentum building with that. And what they're doing, the GCF, it's fantastic work. And they are a proper punter representative. Forget Betting Gaming Council, forget the Racing Post, forget these organisations who purport to be on punter side. They actually are, as well as on bookmaker side as well, right? They are interested in gambling overall.
Yeah, I don't know how you feel about it, but I think going back, if you look at people like the BGC, you get Rob Davis and co at The Guardian, they think that we're with Michael Duga and that we agree with the things he says. We dislike him more than anybody.
God, no.
Absolute shysters over there, in my opinion, if the legal people want to get involved.
In many opinions.
But it's been a two-sided argument between what I would label either prohibitionists or anti-gambling reformers, and then the industry body, which they don't represent punters in the middle. So this majority have not really had a voice until now. And I've said this before, I don't agree with every single thing the GCF says. And I think it'd be really strange if one person did. But the work they've done, not just on affordability, but on helping punters who have been mistreated by bookmakers with payouts. Bookmakers and bank accounts was another campaign they did some work on, didn't they? And then they've obviously commissioned this independent research. And you don't get any good faith debate back from the other side. You just seem to get ad hominem or accusations of corruption. It's just, if we debated like that all the time, we'd never get anywhere. So, I think they're doing a really good job. Abby's been brilliant, isn't she?
The Guardian did a hit piece on GCF. It's so transparently, with an agenda. And, there are some good people that work at The Guardian from the betting side of it. Greg Wood. I think Chris Cook used to work there as well. Greg Wood's great.
Yeah.
I feel sorry for him because, he's on that side, obviously enjoys his betting. He knows about his topic. And then Rob Davis, he'll only ever write something that feeds his agenda rather than something that's of note. For example, GCF, why are bookmakers having bank accounts closed? Or why are bookmakers abusing AML checks to prevent withdrawals and delayed payouts to punters?
Yeah.
Stuff like that, really. That's important. It just gets overlooked.
I mean, if I was Rob Davis, it was an open goal, that case with William Hill and the tennis bets that got a lot of publicity.
Yeah.
Some people online managed to get their cut of that publicity. That's another story.
Yeah, let's not give him a name check, but yeah, there's some interesting stuff out there today accusing him of being a bit of a charlatan.
Yeah.
I think we all experience that eventually once you have a dealing with him. But let's not give him any publicity. I want to talk as well, Josh, about the black market. You mentioned it above. We mentioned it before. And it's going to grow. And we've seen that, as I understand it, there's lots of... I know Andrew Rhodes was bigging it up at the Parliament, whatever it was, the little...
Select committee, yeah.
Select committee, that's it. A bunch of MPs who don't know what the fuck they're talking about. Asking questions to somebody who also doesn't know what he's talking about. And he said, we're working with MasterCard to block payments to black market. Who bets with a black market bookmaker with MasterCard? It's like beggars belief. If you are, good luck to you, because I don't think you'll be doing it for too long. But it certainly is growing. And it's not just Curacao-based websites, and there's tons of them. It's, guys sitting in their bedroom in their underpants. That's the theme of this podcast, who are taking bets, whether they're licensed or unlicensed, or, firms that have a license taking bets online over WhatsApp and what have you. And there's no oversight, there's no regulation, there's no tax revenue, there's nothing at all that makes this legitimate. And just... it's growing and growing and growing. And I've been using a few myself just to explore them. And I can only see it exploding as, you don't need to look particularly hard to find something, even though Rhodesy says, he's working with whoever it might be to eradicate them. It's putting his fingers in the dam, isn't it? It's just useless. He's not going to affect a change.
It's for show, isn't it? It's kind of like we're doing something. But I saw Luke Patton had used one of them and had a pretty awful experience. Like, have you found it so far using them?
Fine, mate, fine. I think the issue would be, like I was chatting to, we'll talk about a racing tipster that's had some really good winners recently, inside information a bit later on. He had a 40-1 winner that, we both saw. And he said, why didn't, could you get on with them? And I was like, well, you could, but would you get paid? Let's say you got, 500 quid on it. Maybe you wanted, I don't know how much. Let's say you have £500 on 250 each way at 40-1, the horse wins. With a black market firm, are you going to get paid? You're going to get paid 5-figure sums on one bet. I think that's unlikely.
Yeah.
And then, maybe it is, I don't know, but I wouldn't like to try that out. I think it's probably okay if you're doing little and small wins and withdrawing and depositing regularly, perhaps. But it's one of those where it might work for one person or might work for a period and they might pay out. They'll get a lot of people on board and get a lot of suckers on to join them. And then suddenly they decide that we're not going to pay anybody and good luck chasing off the Curacao regulator to get your winnings. So yeah, it's out there and it's growing. And some of the websites are really good. I've got to be honest with you. The one I've been using, it's better than many bookmakers that have a presence and a big, big name bookmakers.
You're not on the hook if the police are listening to this podcast, are you? It's them for taking the bets, isn't it?
I believe so. Yeah, I believe so. I believe so, officer. No, I think it's so widespread now that it's a bit like, you're talking about you having a dodgy box to watch or streaming to watch Premier League football, and everyone does it, don't they, and download stuff. So it's one of those where it becomes so pervasive that everyone's up to it. And that's the concern, is like once everyone started to do it, it's very hard to get people to come back to a regulated industry unless there are, lots of bonuses. So that's the problem there, and that's the growth of it. And I think going better with a regulated firm. Go on, don't go with black market firms. You're taking a risk, but it's understandable why some people think that they should, especially when regulated firms behaving badly.
Yeah, well, that's the issue. I was thinking that as you were saying it, but there have been firms, and obviously like Football Index is a big case. There's been some of the bookmakers as well, isn't there, where they've just disappeared into the night. So yeah, regulated's no doubt better at the moment, but you look at US, Asia, some of the Scandinavian countries, I believe Germany are the same. This is what's so frustrating about the debate. All of this is happening elsewhere, and we've got these people in this country looking at this problem and going, oh, no, we've come down from the mountain with the idea. And it's like, but yeah, try and talk them out of it. It's like talking to a door.
They're determined with their current train, the way they're going, their kind of direction, whatever you want to call it, their kind of approach to it is the only way. And I can't see anything change. But then you look at Andrew Rhodes, like, is he interested in betting? Does he really care what happens to the industry? He doesn't.
No.
I would say he probably cares about his next move, which would probably be a move to another industry altogether within the civil service or within public service of some kind. And it might be something completely different. It might be, overseeing the motorways or something like that, or regulating something or other, like water, but nothing to do with betting. So he doesn't ultimately have any interest or a vested interest beyond, his tenure as the CEO or the chairman of the Gambling Commission. And that's part of the issue as well. These people don't really care, I suppose, if it all goes to shit in 10 years' time, because they won't be involved in the industry.
Yeah, I think you listen to the bar stewards as well. The same goes for like someone like Julie Harrington at the BHA. I mean, I don't claim to be I wouldn't be a brilliant administrator. Like, I'd probably get too annoyed with people and start telling people to fuck off and stuff. But you look at her in her interviews and it's just like she's dead behind the eyes. And it's like there's no real passion there. It's all confected. Turns up at a race course every couple of months, smiles with a funny hat on. And it's like, you're kidding nobody. Like, no one has any faith in you. No one believes that you're trying to make the sport better. It feels like gravy train and pigs at the trough are very emotive terms, but it's what you think when you listen to some of these people talk. Like, no brains, like no passion for anything. And it's sad to see, especially with something like horse racing, which it does need leadership. It's not like football. It's not going to sell itself. It needs to be guided in the right way. Yeah, these people are just as useful as a chocolate teapot.
I have to lean on you for that. I don't know all these characters in the horse racing industry and what they're doing. But, I do know, for example, is it Joe Summers Smith?
Yeah.
He made his fortune on fruities.
Online casinos as well, yeah.
Yeah. And the BHA's got into bed with, like, bookmakers selling casino products, just like they did with fob teas, and look how that worked for them. So you have the situation where it's a mess and they've created this own problem, and they put this petition together. I'm not a fan. I don't think it'll do much. I know people are talking about trying to get it to over 100,000 to get a petition. I mean, I've been to Parliament. I went last year and there was like two men and a dog there debating Channel 4's whether it should be privatised. And
they'll be asleep as well.
Yeah, I mean, it sounds good in theory, but you're going to have Philip Davis and you're going to have, who is the other MP? Lawrence Robertson, is it?
Yeah.
A few of the BGC guys who get a hospitality at Stoke turning up to it. But
I'll be up against that lady from Wales there who always appears on TV.
Yes, the one with the purple hair.
People from that side of the debate think that she's brilliant. It's like, if she was making the arguments that I wanted made, I'd be embarrassed.
Yeah.
She's like the drunk at the end of a disco, just scrambling around for ideas. Everything's always very emotional. No thought put into any ideas. It's just, absolute embarrassment. Caroline Harris, is it?
Yeah. I think there's an idea of they're only one side of the debate. They'll only listen to one side, and they're determined to do whatever it takes to get affordability and to bring it all in, regardless of like the warning signs that people might put up and say, well, you might have a good idea in theory, but the reality of how it will play out is inherently different to what you expect it to be. You're actually going to make it worse. And that's what we're saying. You're going to make it worse by, bringing in these checks, because everyone's going to disappear to the black market, for example, where there's no regulation. And bookmakers are probably quite happy with that, the big firms, because, hey, that problem's disappeared and they're all betting with these firms online in Curacao, and we're just dealing with whoever can still afford to or can prove their affordability. Talking about firms, and let's move on, because BetMGM, we're going to talk about Tony Calvin in a minute, aren't we? But BetMGM are launched in the UK. And this is quite good, because if you're a smaller punter, it might be quite useful to you. I'll give you a bit of an outline. BetMGM, there's a big behemoth of a company. I was in Vegas recently. I stayed at one of the hotels, and they've got massive presence there, and they are a big company. They do resorts, right? So they're not just involved in betting, they're involved in leisure industry as a whole. They purchased the Leo Vegas platform, which people will be familiar with, to launch in the UK. And that's what they're using. I think Canby provide the odds. But oddly, they're providing Entain's platform in North America, where it's a 50-50 split between Entain, who's Ladbrokes/Coral, and MGM to bet there. But in the UK, they've launched. And you think, why is a firm launching in the UK at this time when all the bookmakers are kind of disappearing or giving up big firms? I think it's because they're trying to build brand recognition, and perhaps it's the knock-on effect of their results or whatever else might happen by having a bookmaker. Probably not going to make oodles of cash in that market, but maybe the knock-on effect is your reputational, recognition of their brand. And what's quite good is they have deep pockets, don't they, mate? And we did some stuff on this. I'll let you outline it. But for those of you building up a bankroll, they've got a bunch of offers aside from the new account opening stuff that you can really take advantage of. And, even if you're building a small bankroll and betting at like maximum £20 a day, you can get some decent boosts here to build up with little risk, can't you?
Yeah, I'd never signed up for Leo Vegas, so I could get into BetMGM. I'm presuming that if you had been restricted by Leo Vegas before, they might have carried that across. I can't speak to that. Yeah, so £40 when you sign up, £5 free bet weekly, and then there's racing boosts ranging between 10 and 20% on each horse. And then there's profit boosts for accumulators as well. So that's on football. It goes up to 50% if you go 7 selections or more. Now, we talked about this in a members email, didn't we, where we talked about the different ways that you could kind of exploit these things. So obviously with horses, there's so many tipsters and services where you can get true prices or value prices. And then stuff like the bookie bashing racing tracker and the football tracker, the coupon tracker can get you a list of football teams that you could put together. You could even take neutral odds or slightly negative EV odds, put them together with a boost. All of a sudden you've got a value bet. So it's just nice to have a different option for those of us who've been barred from all the other bookmakers, just to have one of those glitzy websites again to go on. Yeah, you're right about the marketing. A strange mix of Chris Rock and Megan Nichols have been the two main things I've seen, but very glitz and glamour. Kind of, we bring in a new game to the UK or something like that was the big line. I'm like, yeah, I don't know if they've been watching the debate in Parliament or at the Gambling Commission, but yeah, they're really going for it, aren't they?
They are. They're going, and if you're a value better, who knows how long your accounts will last, especially the ACCAs, because I think you get 5 profit boosts a week, like you say, and if you put 3 selections in an ACCA, you get 10%, all the way up to 7 selections, you get a 50% profit boost.
Yeah.
Now, even at minimum odds of 1.2, which is 1 to 5 on, let's say you're picking 7 teams that are between 1.2 and 1.5, £20 bet on that. Okay, it's not going to make you great sums. Obviously, you need all 7 to win, but you keep doing it enough, you're getting a 50% profit boost. And, so rather than getting, let's say you're getting £200 profit, you're getting £300 profit. It all adds up.
Yeah.
And it's one of those easy wins. And I think as well, when you do these kind of ACCAs and boosts, that's the reason they put them in is that's the type of punter they want. So they want ACCA punters who are putting in 7 folds every week, because generally they are useless or they're losing punters. So you kind of fit into it nicely. So even if you just do these offers, your accounts may well last a decent chunk of time. But then obviously if you're going to be taking early prices, which is a nice segue in it, mate, to the next topic. If you're taking early 48-hour prices, 48 hours before a race starts, you might still lose the account. So
yeah,
let's get into that, mate, because that's the next point. Early prices, taking it, because Tony Calvin's one of those who's... And it's not the only one. And he puts up bets really early, doesn't he? And that's part of the issue in many free content tips, especially on bookmaker affiliation websites. They put up early and they're less bothered about if you can actually match the price or get on versus actually how many people will view this column by giving it the longest period of time for it to be viewed.
Yeah, I mean, we're recording this after he released his column last week and said he was resetting his profit, which caused a lot of furore. We spoke about that the day it happened, I think, didn't we? And I think just confused by a lot of the things he'd written for different reasons for everyone else, really. So first off, I think he was 30 points down, something like that. And I don't read his column every week. I've never really paid too much attention to him, but he's betting at very high odds. I'm guessing if he's talking about the flat season, he's talking about Saturdays, it's probably quite a small sample. Anyone who knows what they're doing really should be looking at that themselves. I'm not saying Tony, but followers, and saying, well, this is going to happen at those odds with this kind of sample size. I didn't see why he was so down on himself, to be honest. Yeah, obviously the second point is the one you've just made there. Like, if you're betting 3 or 4 days before the racing goes off, I don't really think that any record's really worth too much, because you can't get anything on. What was the Barney Curley saying? You can't get a banana on to win 2. Something like that.
That's a good one. Yeah. Even in the big races though, mate, you're not going to be able to get much on. Exchange liquidity is just not there, is it? Even if you wanted to take that approach.
No. And I think it had happened, it might have been the month before, he'd written about how he couldn't put a horse up because the only good price was available with Betfair. And I was like, well, surely Betfair don't want you to bet with them, because he's like a well-known tipster and he's obviously got a good record. Betfair should be saying to Tony, pick the horses that Coral are top price on, or Denise's top price on, or I don't know, you want him to go back with William Hill, surely, but he was saying, oh, I can't put it up because the price at Betfair and Paddy Power is a lot lower. It just, I'm more, it's just all the contradictions with it all, really, that I think about more than getting angry about the record or anything else.
Yeah.
But yeah. What do you think about it?
I think the record's just a misnomer. Like, he's probably, let's say he's put up 150 bets over the flat season. You know, I might have had 100 and he's had a bad run. I've probably had that over a different sport over a week period or a 2-week period and done worse.
Yeah.
Doesn't mean I have an existential crisis about my betting on that particular sport. I might be betting at 10-1 and I think, well, that's quite normal. And I guess Tony is probably doing big prices. You know, if he's doing the big handicaps on a Saturday, like, they're going to be big price horses generally, you know.
I think that's what he does, yeah. I don't think he's like backing 5-4 shots in like 4-runner races. It's not his style, but see, the thing, I feel like I'm having a go at him here.
We're not, are we? We're not necessarily having a go. We're just...
No, I don't know him that well, to be honest. I haven't really got an opinion either way, but I've noticed him mentioning the weather a lot on Twitter and the going reports for racing on the Saturdays and stuff, which I take a lot of notice of. That's why I don't bet until the day. But then that's a contradiction as well, isn't it? If you're going to say the going's changed from good to soft to heavy since Wednesday, well, why are you putting bets upon Wednesday then? Because the going's always going to change. It's never going to be the same, even with the best forecasts in the world.
Yeah.
We had it at, was it Ascot a couple of weeks ago, where they changed the track that they were running on because of the change in the weather. So you're backing a horse not even knowing what type of course they're going to be running on. So yeah, I just got confused by the whole thing, to be honest. Both Tony's column and the reaction to it, but it's a strange world, isn't it?
It's like content that free tipsters provide, you know, especially if they're right for Sport in Life or Betfair, Racing Post, you know, these kind of outlets who are basically a bookmaker affiliation or bookmakers themselves. Like, they want us money, eyeballs to look at that column. So if you'll get, you know, we talk about Tony here, he's absolutely not the only proponent of it. You know, look at golf guys putting up bets on a Monday. You might say as well, they don't know the forecast, they don't know the tee times. The market is like, you know, a banana. There's nothing there. You can't get your bets on. They're not bothered about that. So that's the thing to bear in mind. What I would say, I had Stephen Harris on recently, who works for BetMGM, and he's adjusted to it. He settles his bets at SP and Betfair SP. Fair enough. You know, because he's tipping early and he's like, yeah, I work for BetMGM. I provide free content. I understand that. If I put up a bet at 20-1 and, you know, it's 10-1 by the actual morning of the race, when you can actually get on, I'm not going to win too many fans, but I'll settle to Betfair SP and SB and he makes a profit to that. So for me, that's the way to do it. I know Stephen keeps a record, right? So that's the other problem. If Tony's putting it up and resetting, well, just publish your record all the way back to whenever you began. And there's no problem then, is there? You can be like, well, I lost in the 2023 flat season, but look, I did really well, you know, for 10 years prior to that. And I've had bad runs in the past that I've overcome. So it's just one of them, isn't it? So, but there is better practice, isn't there? And it kind of, we'll talk a little bit about some of the SBC tipsters that we are reviewing coming up or have reviewed and continue to focus and recommend in the past. And one of those is a European basketball tipster by the name of Demetrio Giotti. And he is an example of how to do it in the right way, because he's tipping in European basketball, which actually is a sizable market, closer to tip-off. But rather than, let's say the market opens, game start on a Saturday, and maybe the market opens on a Wednesday. At that point, maybe the maximum bet size is 100 is US dollars with Pinnacle, 100 US dollars. Now, come Friday, that might be, you know, or come Saturday morning, that might be 2,500.
Yeah, that's about right, actually. Yeah.
Yeah. So why would you take $100? You can only get $100 on, and, you know, limited liquidity versus tipping on Saturday when that market is 2.5. And not only can you get more on, but your members and people following. And that's the difference really when you get to, you know, trying to find actual proper services that you can follow, you know, sustainably and that put up real life prices. Because otherwise, you know, you're all squabbling around for taking the small amount of liquidity that exists with bookmakers, and ultimately you're getting worse value, aren't you?
I listened to, is it Spaces? Is that what it's called on Twitter? Recently with...
Yeah, Twitter Spaces.
Yeah, there's Aidan O'Hara. It's definitely Aidan. He was on with IC talking about his record and his tipping and stuff. And he's now charging customers, but he's waiting a lot later to put his bets up. And I think from reading between the lines and listening to what he was saying, he was putting bets up at like 33-1 on the morning of the races. This is as well. That's not even close to the off. And they're getting cut right down to 10-1 straight away. And it's like, well, yeah, you have to consider all of these things. But then I think on on our side as followers or punters, it's also understanding what the site's trying to do. What is the Sporting Life trying to do? It's trying to get as many eyes onto their pages, as many click-throughs as they can get. So we shouldn't be so naive as to try and understand what everybody's trying to do for themselves. And have a look at these records, have a look at what the policies are around tipping. You'll be able to find something that's good for you.
What's that people say? If something is free, you are the product, whether it be like a Facebook or TikTok or Instagram or whatever, or even free tipsters, you are being marketed or your data is being used in some way, and you have to understand why.
Do you remember the Facebook furore a few years ago? Facebook had basically been selling massive data sets. It was illegal, but they've been selling data around people who are on their platform. I remember talking to people at the time and I was saying, why do you think these are multi-billion pound companies? Have you ever paid a penny to Facebook? Their business models based on advertising and big data. To think anything different is just naive. It's maybe the culture we live in that we expect everything for free at the moment. The bookies probably haven't helped with that, with all their free bet offers and bog and everything else. But yeah, you've got to be realistic at the same time. Understand what your Tony Calvins and what Betfair are doing with that column, assessing it for what it is. Yeah, you're exactly right about Demetrio. I did a video. Was that the first video I recorded when I did this set, Pete?
It might have been, yeah.
Yeah, just really good policy of only releasing tips when there's $1,000 liquidity on Pinnacle. And obviously, you can get profitable tipping off that in the lead up to the off, and you can get it on the off as well. I think it was 8% closing line. So, yeah, really good service. And there's loads, isn't there, where we really have to look at these policies to work out whether it's something we want to promote or not.
Yeah, like I get quite a few people putting up racing tips, for example, the night before, or very illiquid markets. And we have a policy now, which we talked about at the start of the year, whereby we removed, there's one service in the Hall of Fame which worked a little bit differently, but still did that. And it's like, look, we can't have this status for a service in this market, and then we're not reviewing any services that do that, because, well, it's quite easy to make a high ROI tipping mythical prices early into an early market, and yeah, you've got to be mindful of that because you're going to risk your accounts quite quickly, more quickly than you might otherwise, and before you maybe even made a profit. Because if you're betting, backing something warm at 30-1 that starts at 5-1, and you do that a couple of times, that's, you don't have to be the most skilled trader at a bookmaker to find that and to kick you into touch. I also it's good actually to talk about inside information based racing tips that we tweeted about last week. Yeah, here we go.
We're opening Pandora's box.
Open the floodgates, and we are both cynical souls when it comes to betting services. I think default position is, okay, right, you say you're good, okay, we'll be the judge of that.
Yeah,
because so many people come across our desk and be like, I'm the best thing since sliced bread, I'm the new Barney Curley, I'm the new Patrick Veach, but often the reality is they're not, and their ego gets ahead of them. But this particular service actually does seem to have information, and the reason is for that is their record, 86%. I think that's higher now because we had a winner early today. It's probably 88.
Well, yeah, I was going to say that's before today. So yeah, I voice noted you earlier. So I think two of the last horses, we've been on a call when they've been running, haven't we? There was one where it was a BSP of over 60 and it absolutely hacked up. There was one where we watched the Betfair ladder and it went from 20 down to 15, down to 12, down to 8, and just kept on going. Odds on, I think it then went back out above even money and then was odds on again. The one today has won, I won't say the price because people will be able to work out what the horse was, but that's including the one from Saturday as well, which was only 5-1. That's 4 selections in a row, recommended at 40-1, 22-1, 9-2, and 12-1. They're the prices that were put up. So that gives people an idea of what we're dealing with here. You said about being cynical. I just didn't believe it for months. You sent me the record. No, I don't believe it. This is bullshit. Before I looked at the detail, I was like, these are prices that are going up early. They're standout prices. I thought they might just be straight lies. I thought everything that could be wrong before seeing how it all worked in the Telegram group. We could quite easily dispel quite a lot of that already, couldn't we?
Yeah, and I think we put up a tweet, I put up a tweet that was talking about information from Mark, who works for us, right? He's our analyst, and he was outlining some of his experiences using information in the past. And I referenced this record, and people are like, what? That's not true. And I think everyone's going to have that opinion when we're going to release this at the end of November. We're working on it as we speak. And 88% or whatever it is now, 89% after today's win are ROI at bookmakers over 700 bets. Now, it's not the biggest sample, but that's taken 2 years. Over a year and a half, we've been proofing it, or just about a year and a half. So we've seen this live. We've seen lots of these wins live, not had a losing month. The average odds are ridiculous, double figures. To hit that kind of 38% strike rate. You don't get that if you're studying form. You don't get that.
There's something else which you can't capture it with CLV. You can't capture it with ROI. It's kind of like a smell test, but for horses. Now, for anyone who's like watching racing every day, there was a Burns horse, I don't know how long ago it was now, 6-8 weeks. I think it was called Anyway. Now, that got backed in the morning from 33 to 1 into even money. And for anyone who watched that race, it had won after a furlong. You could see the way it was moving. You could see it on the Betfair market. It was going to win. It never looked like not winning. 2 of the horses that I've watched in those last 4 have been 20 to 1 plus, and they've won in the same way. The one the other day that had a BSP, which was closer to 100 to 50, it was, was it 60, 67, was it? Something around there.
Yeah.
That won, but I won't say by how much, because again, I'm trying not to give too much away. It won like an even money favourite. You can't capture that with CLV or with anything else. But when you're talking about inside information and a horse that's well treated or is ahead of its mark and all this, you kind of can read quite a bit into it. So I'm still now trying to find problems with that service, but I can't find any. It's ridiculous.
Yeah. Well, I think we're going to get quite the reaction once we release it. And we are, it's not really something we're going to recommend. I think the issue we have is we've seen this unfold with our own eyes. We've seen these winners kick in. What's the Betfair market? What's the odds checker market? He's tipping in the show. That's the other thing, isn't it? He's tipping
I didn't know whether you wanted to reveal that, but tipping 15 minutes before the off. Yeah.
Yeah, within that. We can, that doesn't say who it is necessarily, but, you're tipping in the show. It's a very mature market. Betfair, the money starts to flood in at that particular point, well, not relative to what it used to be a few years ago, but still that's the most liquid time when money starts to come in, the bots firing.
Yeah.
And money is there, and we watch the market. We see that those prices are available, at least at the point where the tips put forward. And it's just ticking all the boxes. And it's going to be interesting to see what takes place. Because, the issue with information is sustainability. Information, it can dry up instantly, right? You piss off the wrong person who provides that information, or you put up a bet and ruin the price too soon, or put something up when you've been told not to. You're blacklisted, you're gone. So that's the issue and I think you can't gauge that. The only person who's going to know that really are the people running that particular service. And are they ever going to be straightforward and be like, let's say you've got, I don't know how many members, let's say you've got 500 members all paying 50 quid a month. Are you going to turn around to people and say, oh, my information's gone now, and give that up straight away? I mean, that's a question.
You're going to keep your 25 grand for a couple of months, aren't you? You're going to guess maybe. This is the thing that we're talking about this, because it just shows everybody what we're thinking as proofing service. Like, we're very cynical about these amazing services. There's also a risk, Pete, of the tragedy of the commons, that it might be 400, 500 subscribers at the moment. If that goes up to 1,000, it might prove to be a tipping point where people just can't get the prices anymore. And then, those connections might start saying, we don't want this anymore because we can't get prices ourselves. So we're not naive to it at all. We understand why people are looking at it and thinking that it's bananas, but it's not at the moment. So yeah.
Well, look out for that. We're going to spend so much time working on this one, I know, because whatever we do, we're going to get a load of correspondence at the end of it.
Yeah. I understand. You understand as well, don't you?
Yeah,
you kind of see why people think it.
I would be the same. On the outside looking in, I would want to have all my questions and all my cynicism addressed. So, we'll try and do that as best we can. That'll be out later this month. One that we have just released today, this is the 7th of November recording. Well, this podcast will probably go out next week. A service called Chasing Steamers. Happy to name this one. And what's different about this one is, I've seen a few strategies based on this, and it's effectively monitoring Pinnacle odds drops. Now, Pinnacle, obviously the sharpest bookmaker in the world, and all big punters syndicates bet with Pinnacle. And then what Pinnacle then do, they profile their customers. And so then if a lot of money comes in, or sharp money comes in from a source that they know is sharp on a particular market, and they will adjust their prices, right? And you can often see big drops, especially in smaller markets or games or events that aren't quite as high profile as a Premier League game, for example. And what this then does is it alerts you when there's a Pinnacle move, and then you go and get on with a soft bookmaker. So the example we had in our email we put out, there was a tennis player that was priced up about 3.6. That dropped to, I think, 2.38 or something like that with Pinnacle. But yet you can still get 3.5 with lots of different bookmakers. Now, those prices move maybe within a window of 5 to 10 minutes, depending upon the bookmaker. So it's speed of the essence. And, naturally, you're going to get your account closed taking this approach, just as you would of any value approach.
Yeah.
But the way it works is you could literally on a weekend, on a Saturday, you could get 200 alerts, depending upon which sports you take, your sport, like soccer, basketball, tennis, volleyball, all kinds of myriad of stuff. So you could get a lot of action through your account over whatever period of time. And by the time the bookmaker catches up to you, you're already quite far ahead. And this is really, we used it ourselves, didn't we? So again, like we watched this and bet on it ourselves and lost a couple of accounts doing it, but we actually did okay out of it, didn't we, from doing so?
My abiding memory, I think we did this, back March, April time. It was around then, wasn't it?
I think it was summertime. I'm still using it. I've got to be honest, I'm still using it.
Oh, yeah, I burnt too many accounts. I kind of just wrote them off and used that. But every weekend I see my mum, and we'll go for a walk with the dog. She doesn't like my betting, I don't think. She'll ask about what I'm working on. So I might say, I'm trying something new for golf, or I started a new horse racing service. And she asked me one weekend, and I said to her, I'm doing a thing where I'm betting on like Venezuelan second division volleyball. And she's like, what? And I'm like, well, there's this exchange in America called Pinnacle. When they have loads of money come in from around the world, the odds drop. And then that tells me, and her eyes just glazed over, like thinking, what is my son doing? Like, it's a disgrace. Like, this is degenerate stuff. It was interesting to watch it all work. And yeah, like, we're going to get cynical comments about this one as well. Might as well get that out there. People are going to call it all kinds of names. But again, just understand what it is. If you want to grow a bank and you're not bothered about losing 2 or 3 obscure bookmaker accounts, you can turn £1,000 into 2 over a weekend. That's what it's there for. It's not going to make you a retirement fund, but it's a really interesting service. And it was really interesting to use it. Made some good money doing it, and move on to something else. But how did you find using it, Pete? Well, you still are, aren't you?
I still are. I still am, but I'm more targeted. What I think is really good, we're going to do a deep dive for members, do a video, probably do some illustration, probably follow some live, show people how it works to showcase it.
Yeah.
But yeah, I found it quite good. If you were in position, on a Saturday morning, if you had a Saturday morning to yourself, you could quite happily get on 50 to 100 bets with a firm. And especially if you've got a firm that covers most markets, you can get them on if you're quick, and you can just do a lot of activity like that. And I think that's the best way to use it, rather than doing dribs and drabs, rather than do like one a day, because, you're going to lose that account within.
Smash it,
you're going to lose that account quite quickly in terms of days. But yeah, I found it quite good. What I would advocate as well is you've got to be careful who you bet with. I did it with BetVictor, the BetVictor account, and I think I'd placed like 7 bets in 10 minutes, or maybe 30 minutes. And before any of them had settled, that account went bang. And I had that account for a while, and so they were really hot on it. Whereas other firms, I think I used Bet Goodwin, one of the smaller firms, and I got quite a lot on with them, and they have extensive coverage.
They were the ones I used, yeah.
Yeah. I didn't have an issue until, my P&L was to an extent that it flagged. So yeah, it's not going to, like I say, not going to make you a retirement fund, but if you're looking to maximize your accounts and you're happy to bet a lot quickly, then you can do quite well.
Yeah, I was thinking about it in terms of our 5 stages. So maybe not stage 1. I don't know if people have looked at this, but because you might want to have a little bit of experience of understanding odds and getting onto sites quickly. But if you're looking to grow your bank in stages 2 or 3, we've got lists of bookmakers on our site that you can work your way through quite quickly. That's what I did. I just used it with all these firms that we have been looking at, and made quite a bit of cash. One thing I will say, I learned along the way, only bet on ones where the limits are quite high with Pinnacle.
Yeah.
Otherwise it can be a false positive. I was really naive as well. I should have been using some multiples. So I should have done some doubles and trebles.
Mm-hmm.
I think that would have kept me in the game a bit longer, but yeah, you live and you learn. I'm not really too bothered about losing those accounts. Made a little bit of cash to put into other pots. So yeah, it's good stuff.
That's a good point, actually, about the market size, mate. I was going to say that you're right on the market size, and that's in the review. We evaluated it by market. And so to speak on that, you might get, like, say, second division Albanian football, and there might be a $200 Pinnacle limit. So it doesn't take as much to move that than it might do a $2,000 tennis game. So the $2,000 move is way more significant than the $200 one. So by targeting those bigger markets, you're more likely to actually have proper value versus, just being small bet, faking the market, and you're not actually on a value price. You do sometimes would see that, you took a bet at 2.0, it drops to 1.7, and you think, oh, happy days. And then you look at 10 minutes later and it's back out to 2.1. So
yeah, we met some quite advanced bettors at the Smart Bash, didn't we, Pete? And they were talking about this, about how some of those smaller Pinnacle markets can get manipulated by big bettors. So they'll knock a price in, wanting to back the other side with softer bookmakers. So got to be wary of things like that. When I think of chasing steamers, I always think of winner odds because that's like automated. So how are you finding that at the moment?
Yeah, that's good. And there's a video out on the SBC YouTube channel about that and my usage of it. It's a similar concept, really. You're getting on a tennis bet quite quickly, or you're not getting on it at all. And you might take a guy at 1.5, and within 15 minutes it's 1.4, 1.35. And the issue with the closing line value with that is that you're betting into small markets, and there's such money from the winner odds clientele that it forces it down artificially. So that's not always the best metric, but what is your metric is your profit and loss, and that can't be denied. So that's certainly an indicator of its success. And there's just a couple options there with winner odds, chasing steamers. Just there's several more, which if you have soft bookmaker firms and you have opportunity to bet throughout the day, or you can turn them both on and off as well. That's the other thing. We like this, whether it be the value machine, that's another option, or bookie bashing, you can use it when you want. So if you want to follow chasing steamers on Saturday morning only, you just mute it and turn it on Saturday morning. Or you want to follow the tennis stuff on Monday and Tuesday only, or in your lunch hour, then you can absolutely do that. So that's really good. The flexibility. And a couple more then, let's just to wrap up with today, because we're going to do a deeper dive into a podcast, probably a standalone on golf, the Bookie Bashing Golf Tracker. We're huge fans of that, both each way. And when we started the pod, we talked about a big win. That was Eric Van Rooyen, who we both had. And I'll preface that, not just talk about the winners. I had a lot of losers prior to that, I've got to tell you.
Yeah.
So I had You
did. Yeah, it wasn't nice, was it?
No. So yeah, I had Matty Schmidt the week before. I think it was the week before. I was away on holiday, and he lost when he should have won at a big price. So I'm just going to say, I was due a nice winner because EVR, he eagled the 18th for that particular win. It was trading 20-1, the 2 holes prior. So it was quite an outsider. So it's nice to be on the right end of that.
I'd written him off. Who was our other player?
Justin Sue, wasn't it? Yeah. He looked more likely at that point. He ended up coming in. I've got to say, I'm on the opposite side on it. I'm running very hot at the moment. I've been hitting a lot of luck. So Luke List was in the 5-player playoff, had Sami Välimäki win a playoff, Rio Hisatsune,
yeah.
Yeah.
I'm just on the right side of variance with golf at the moment. I'm fully expecting to fall off that mountain soon enough. But yeah, it's a nice while it lasts, isn't it? But yeah, glad to see you back on the horse, Pete, with the golf wins.
That's it. Yeah, we could feed the children this week. So that was nice to put some food on the table.
You'll have campaigners on if you make jokes like
that. God, I hope not. I hope they don't listen. And wrap things off with Head Start Racing. It's a free Tipster SBC. It's doing really well, isn't it? Yeah. You've listed all the winners, mate. You listed the winners this month. There's too many to read.
I have. It's quite high volume, so it's 8 to 10 bets a day. I've not been following it myself because it's bookmaker based, but let me just read these off. So 22-1, 20-1, 28-1, 16-1, 18-1, 16-1, 25-1, 40-1, 14-1, which is rubbish because it's not above 20, 20-1, 18-1, 12-1, 18-1, 18-1, 25-1, 50-1, that's better, 33-1, 16-1, and 40-1. And they're the winners just from October. So that gives you an idea of the odds he's tipping at, but you get plenty of places alongside that. So as we were talking about with chasing steamers earlier, if you've got bookmaker accounts and you want horse racing bets, that's free with the SBC. So if you're an SBC member, you sign up to that and you get it sent straight to your email every time there's a bet. So yeah, Head Start Racing, new service with us and doing very well at the moment.
It's been impressive, hasn't it? It's been impressive. It's well worth checking out. I mean, it's a free tipster, so we're trying to build up his record. I think the record is at 1,500 bets or so now, because there's 8 to 10 bets a day.
Yeah, it's quite high volume, yeah.
Yeah. So In terms of chronologically, I think it's been going since April. We've been proofing it. So it's not been going the longest period of time, but obviously with 8 to 10 or I think it's about 10 bets a day, you quickly build up a decent record. So it's well worth checking out because there's several options there, aren't there, mate? So we talked about some exchange stuff, like we're going to get into the golf exchange stuff next month pod. And, if you've got softer firms, then the availability there, even smaller firms, so many options available to you. People kind of, they lose their Bet365 account and they think the game's over. Well, it's not. You need to adapt and evolve. I had Nick Goff on talking about how he's, even the sharp side of it, he's adapted and evolved his betting to get on with Asian firms and and that's ultimately the game, isn't it? Those edges exist for a period of time. You might lose them over after a certain point. The bookmaker wises up to it, closes that loophole or closes you down. And then it's about, what do you do next? And so that's where we got those 5 stages. And that's been quite popular because, walking you through each step. So if you're listening to a beginner, well, hey, we got a bunch of stuff for you there. And if you're someone a bit more advanced and looking to bet into Asia or Penny or exchange, then we've got some options too. So just a rundown there of some of our services. And obviously you can explore all of that in the SBC content, magazines, YouTube, Twitter. There's lots of stuff out there for you to absorb. Even if you're not a member, go and check out. We've got some free reviews, free content, and the winner odds video, for example, gives you everything you need to know about the edge from that particular service as well. And, we try and give as much good content out for free to educate and inform people about what's going on. So I think that's everything, isn't it, Josh? I think that's all
You've already mentioned it there, but I was going to direct people towards our YouTube channel because I know you did a brilliant review of winner odds yourself. And then I've also touched on things like weekly golf value, optimum racing, Demetrio Giotti. That will, within those videos, you'll get an idea of the kind of work we do behind the scenes. So that'll just top up your understanding of what we do and how we can help. So yeah, they're all free resources, gives you a good flavour of what we offer. So good place to start.
Good place to start. Yeah. So you can find us on YouTube, Smart Betting Club on there, at SBC Info on Twitter. And you can email both of us, Pete or Josh, at smartbettingclub.com. And obviously the smartbettingclub.com for everything else that's available on the website. So thank you, Josh, for joining me today, chewing the fat on, the Betting Clever pod, and we'll be back. We'll do these kind of irregular. Maybe we'll have a guest on in the future as well. We'll get someone on to kind of give some more opinions and ideas. So thank you for listening. And if you enjoyed this, please do like and review us on your podcast directory. So thank you very so much, guys, and we'll speak to you soon.